Good morning, everybody. I am Elena Gates. I am your Pro Standards Vice Chair and also committee member for the Education Committee at OCR. And it is my pleasure to introduce to you this morning John Ost and Rob Jenikin for the appraisal. So go ahead, John.
Good morning. Nice to have everyone here. I've come to share some information regarding the appraisal industry, meeting the appraisers, with the realtors out there, and with me joining us is Rob Jenikin, who's the managing partner of Appraisal Solutions and Products, a company we own together. Rob really does everything, and I just kind of watch what he does so well. So I have him here with us this morning. The first slide is just a little bit about myself, which is really not that important, but it's all here. I've been in the business about 40 years before there was even licensing for appraisers, so I'll kind of leave it at that. Belong to the Pacific West Realtors and actively in the business as both a broker and appraiser. Then I've got Rob, BA in marketing from Cal State University Fullerton, managing partner of Appraisal Solutions and Products, and he's been a licensed certified appraiser since 1992, specializing in high-end estate properties. One of the best appraisers I've ever met in my life. He's really terrific. So I thought I'd start the seminar out on one of my favorite slides that really most of you should know most of this information without really going into it. But I think sometimes we don't, we're so focused on what we're doing, we don't kind of see the big picture. And this is an organization that Rob and I belong to, which is the Real Estate Research Council. And it is out of Cal Poly Pomona, and it was headed by a gentleman named Dr. Carney, who has now been succeeded by some other very good people over there, very well attended. And they put together some really interesting information. So this is really about the marketplace. And they started this back in April of 1990. And what they actually do is they have, I believe it's 7 counties in Northern California and 8 counties in Southern California. And they appraise 2 houses in every city in those counties. And when we originally started this, Rob and I used to actually go out and do some of the appraisal work for them in the 1990s. And they appraise the properties in April and October of every year, and they put together the data. And what's really interesting about this data, it's different than what you normally see. It's not based on a median price, which is usually what you see, median price per zip code or whatever it happens to be. This data is comprised of square foot prices based on the same houses. So they actually appraise the same house every 6 months. And it's really, really good data. And we use it a lot in our business, especially when we're doing retrospective appraisal work, which is probably something that you're not that interested in. But we are sometimes trying to pin the value of a property today, but also what it was worth maybe in 2006 or something of that sort. But what's really interesting about this is this kind of shows you, I don't know if you remember the dates like I do, but March of 1990 was actually the peak of the housing market in Orange County, a month before this data started being collected. And we went down about 30% in the recession of the 1990s. And during that time, in our 30% downward, it took about 5 or 6 years to actually get all the way to where it leveled off. And then about 3 years to come back to the same prices. So somewhere around March of 2000, April 2000, we were back to the same prices. So if you had a $300,000 home here, some 10 years and 3 months later it was, if you actually look at the statistics, we were back to the same price again after a 30% drop. And that drop again was over about a 6 or 7 year period. Then if you look at what happened, and some of you have been in the business at least since 2000, we're in this tremendous increase. We went up 250% in value in Orange County here, all the way till we peaked in November of 2006 was the peak here in Orange County. And it's really kind of interesting to see that. So you've got a 10-year, 3-month period here from value peak to value peak. And then if you look here from this peak from 2006 and then the Great Recession that we just have, been through since 2007, when all this went down, we dropped about 35% here in Orange County, a little bit more than here, but it looks like it's bigger because the numbers are all bigger. But we went down about 35%. We also did that in a 3-year period. And so the crash just felt much, much bigger than it did back here, even though they were both pretty serious. I had always predicted that we would be another 10 years before we got back to values. And as you can see, against what everybody else seemed to be predicting at the time, they were all saying we're going to recover in 3 years or 6 years. It did, in fact, take us 10 years and almost 11 years for us to get back to the same price as we were at this peak. And now we're up in here, which is kind of interesting because if this follows what we did back here, we're going to see another 250% increase in values. And I'm sure a lot of you that seems kind of crazy, but I mean, think about how fast we were going up last year and the beginning of this year. So I like sharing that, and I want to give Dr. Carney over there at Cal Poly Pomona all the credit for putting together the data. The only thing I've done is take the data and put it on a graph to kind of take a look and see what it really looks like. So next, I'm going to go through a little bit of history because I want you to kind of see what's going on. And so, I don't want to bore you totally, but back in 1987, we had a huge stock market crash. Some of you that remember it anyway, the FIREA, which was the Financial Institution Reform Recovery Enforcement Act of 1989, I believe that's the right acronym, they created the RTC, which was the Resolution Trust Corporation. So this was referred to as the Savings and Loan Bailout. So what was really interesting, they created the Resolution Trust Corporation, which became the second largest corporation in the country immediately, and it went out and started liquidating all the savings and loans. As a result of this financial crash in the housing market, and the market in general, plus the housing market, the lenders blamed the appraisers. They were saying, well, they were overvaluing the properties, and there was what was going on, which was also a term that's referred to as lender pressure, where the lenders are pushing the appraisers to come in at value. And I'm not trying to say this one-sided because I'm an appraiser. It has nothing to do with that. I'm just reporting what I saw going on. And so they blame the appraisers. And I personally, I will give you my personal input as well. I don't think it was all the appraiser's fault. It may have been part of the appraiser's fault, but they didn't have quite as good of a lobbying force as the MBA, the mortgage bankers. So, but as a result of it, and this is what's interesting, out of that legislation was the inception of appraisal licensing. So it's really a young industry. Prior to 1992, there was no appraisal licensing. There were some professional appraisal organizations that you might belong to, but there was nobody regulating the appraisers. And so this began a whole new career for people. The schools had to adapt to that, mostly in the real estate departments. They created appraisal classes, and they set up federally what the classes needed to the content of the classes and all that. And so we're still under appraisal licensing, and that's been a good thing for the industry. The regulation has been pretty good. But then again, back in 2006, when we peaked in the market, which I was just showing you, we went into the Great Recession, I guess is what we normally have been calling it. And we had huge housing crash, the House of Cards. We've all seen some of the movies regarding that and everything. But again, what came out of it, which was kind of interesting again, was the lenders blamed the appraisers for overvaluing the properties and everything. So another big turn in the industry was the Dodd-Frank Act of 2010. So let's talk about that a little bit. Dodd-Frank, and I'm just going to read this, was a Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. It was a legislative reaction to the Great Recession or the mortgage meltdown or financial crisis of 2007 to overhaul the way Wall Street did business. As far as the appraisers, there are provisions in Dodd-Frank that are meant to reduce pressure from lenders on appraisers to hit a value. This was commonly referred to as lender pressure. It gives the appraisers the needed independence to determine an accurate opinion of market value. With the advent of appraisal management companies, AMCs, which act as a middleman. And this company that Rob manages, Rob Jenikin manages, who's with us, is an appraisal management company. And it's a direct result of the Dodd-Frank Act. And part of its purpose is it stops predatory AMCs from charging higher than average fees, because that's something that was going on at the time. And then only paying the appraisers that actually did the work less than 50% of the fee in many cases. So it mandates that appraisers must be paid a quote unquote customary and reasonable fees for their area. So part of the interesting things that came out of that is the idea behind the Dodd-Frank thing was if the lenders and the appraisers don't communicate directly with each other, then they're going to be able to avoid the lender pressure problem. That independence will help the industry so that this overvaluing won't happen. But I think as a result, all it did was, and that's just kind of my opinion, but I think all it really did was just shift the problem from the lenders to the appraisal management companies, which now the appraisal management companies are in touch with the appraisers. And if the appraisal management company is not ethical or running as it should run, then you're going to have a lot of the same problems. Appraisers who are feeling the pressure that they have to hit a value, that they're not being independent. And I think that, in a lot of ways, what it did was it shifted the problem to the AMCs, and at the same time took away a lot of the fees that the appraisers themselves were getting. So having said that, a little bit of fact and a little bit of opinion. Rob, do you have anything to say at this point?
I think with the AMCs, the problem we're facing though is that not all the AMCs are knowledgeable in the areas where appraisals are being completed. So therefore, sometimes if you get appraisers that are assigned jobs that are not local or knowledgeable, I know the problem would be then the agents, I think, have issues with that the AMC is not knowledgeable enough to necessarily handle that problem because they're not necessarily knowledgeable in the area. So I know that we've lost some, before we had local appraisers typically doing work for local lenders or mortgage brokers. So I think that we have lost a little bit of the experience of local appraisers backed by a knowledgeable appraisal company that can assist. So I think that the AMCs in the long run probably have hurt some of the issues because I just think they're not, a lot of them are from back east or they're not local, that they're not able to assist the local appraiser maybe in a manner that helps make the appraiser better.
Yeah, that's really an excellent point, Rob. Something that I had thought about, but I didn't get it into my portion of the presentation because having the local appraisers like we did in the old days, the people were more familiar with the area, and there have been a lot of criticism. And I mean, we're licensed in 5 or 6 states ourselves, and so you know, really having to employ those appraisers who are familiar with the area is really important. And I think a lot of the AMCs, they're a little bit far reaching when it comes to that. So you don't necessarily have the local presence. I think that's a really good point, Rob. Next thing I was going to talk about is the appraisal inspection. And there's this big thing out there, which I always find very interesting. Can agents talk to the appraiser? In fact, some of the questions that came to me about this presentation, you know, could I address this? Because there are so many agents who think that they can't talk to the appraisers. And one of the reasons why I backed up the presentation to give you a little bit of history of actually how we got to where we are is because there is some truth that the lenders should not be communicating maybe directly or at least influencing the appraisers, but that's lenders and appraisers. That's not realtors and appraisers. Okay, so as an agent, absolutely you can talk to the appraisers. And in fact, we like when agents talk to us. We like information that's brought to us. And I'm going to cover a couple things, and I know Rob has some things to talk about in this too. Make sure you know when you show up to an inspection, you bring all the information regarding the listing, marketing of the property, and offers on the property. And you know, if you don't want to bring 12 offers with you, bring a summary of the offers so that the appraiser has something for the file. I mean, here we are or we have been anyway, in a market where we have multiple offers on properties. The properties are selling for over the listed price. The comps are not there. You know, how can the appraiser justify, you know, getting to that value? Well, you know, our job as an appraiser is to find the quote unquote market value, which is quote unquote the most probable selling price. And if you show me 12 offers on a property that's $500,000, and they're all over 500,000, I think I have to conclude that, you know, the most probable selling price is over 500,000 over the listed price. But if you give me that information, then I can keep that in my file and I can support it when I need to defend it. When the lender comes back and says, well, how did you do that? Because your comps are all 490, 480. Well, that's how you did it, because you're also looking at what the offers where the came in. Also, bring relevant comps. I mean, if you're trying to support a higher value than a listed price, for example, look for properties that are smaller, maybe less bedrooms, that have sold recently for almost the same price, so that the appraiser can use that comp and make proper adjustments for the square footage, for the bedrooms, to push it up to where it belongs. Make the property look good. Turn on the lights, just as if you were showing the property. Just because it's an appraiser, don't let your guard down. I mean, you want this property to shine as a listing agent, and so treat it just as if you were showing the property to a client. If you have situations where you have family rooms that have been added on, things of those sorts, it's not necessary to bring permits, but if certainly if there's something that's questionable, there's a family room that's added on, but it has a relatively flat roof, looks like maybe it was an enclosed patio. If you've got permits for that, bring it so that the appraiser again can count that as square footage. If you don't have permits, then that's another situation. But just because you don't have permits doesn't mean the appraiser can't, look at the property, consider that it still may offer some value. But if you have the permits, certainly that takes the question off the table. So why not present that? And that's something you should be asking your seller when you list the property anyway. If you've got some sort of an addition, you should be asking your seller for the permits, because you're going to have to fill out a TDS transfer disclosure statement. The seller has to fill it out, and then you're going to have to fill out your portion of your inspection as well. And then if you have the information for the homeowners association, sometimes that's information that's more difficult for us to get. How many units there are, what the HOA fees are. Solar panels, another problem that we've been encountering probably in the last 10 years. We look at a house. I have no way of telling when I look at a house whether the solar panels are owned or they're leased. And of course, that can make a difference in the value of the property as well. And then especially on larger custom homes, if we're out there appraising something that's 5, 6, 7,000 feet or bigger, very nice to have the blueprints. Our measurements, we're pretty darn good at what we do, but if you're a half a foot off on the perimeter of a house, all the way around a house, you could be 200 feet off pretty easy on the square footage. So having blueprints or something to back up whatever it is. And then also, look up the property on Realist, which you should have been doing when you listed the property, and seeing if there's any discrepancies between bedroom, bathroom counts, square footage, and things like that, and trying to address that, with your seller, and then also with the appraiser, so that, you can get all the square footage that you can, make sure that it's all livable space if it's appropriate. Rob, I think you said you had some stuff you wanted to talk about that too.
I think the best thing that I've always found that good agents can do to help with the process is that we both know that the agents and the appraisers, we have the same data. We're both members of the MLS. We have access to the same information, but what we don't have access to is the interior of the properties. So most appraisers are, when they look at comps, they're reading the comments from the agent, they're looking at the photos in the MLS, but they actually haven't walked in the property. And so if you're providing comp data to the appraiser, it's the extra things you can offer in the notes possibly that make the difference, such as I know this comp sold last month, and I know it reads well, but I've been in the property. The photos are a lot nicer than the property actually is. Or the floor plan is it's not good. They had issues with it. They had issues marketing the property. So it's those little things that agents can offer because they've been in these homes. You guys do tours of these properties a lot when they come on the market. So, and you know what people are saying. So if you can provide those extra facts about each of the comparables that the appraiser has no way of knowing, that can be the difference maker in making purchase price or not. Also, if you talk to the agents that this pending is selling at 20,000 above list price, I verified it with the agent. You can call them; they'll confirm it. So getting pending information price, I think, is really important, especially in an increasing market. But also just taking the time and making those extra notes about the comps and providing that to the appraiser so they're aware of it. Also, a lot of appraisers miss is remodeling. A lot of them, they're not good about asking how much was spent on this remodel. The kitchen, you could have a $20,000 remodel kitchen, or you could have a $50,000 or $100,000 remodel kitchen. So providing dollar amounts on what's been remodeled on the property, I think, is very important. So you can say in the last 5 years, they've remodeled the kitchen, they've done the bathrooms, flooring, these items, they've spent approximately $125,000. Those kind of numbers, I think, are relevant in the appraisal and are going to help the appraiser make better adjustments in the reports of the comps that don't have that. And the same thing, pointing out that this comp, I've been in there. Yes, the kitchen was updated, but they just painted the cabinets, put on new countertops. It's not brand new cabinets. It's not this. So those kind of items, I think, are crucial. And that can be very helpful to the appraiser when he's writing up his appraisals to make sure that he makes the right adjustments. And a lot of times that'll solve any problems in the purchase price.
Good point, Rob. The next thing I was going to talk about, and I'm sure, Rob, you'll have a lot to say about this as well, because we spent a lot of time when we used to work a lot together discussing these things. And that's the impact of upgrades on the property, and then kind of tied together with it, the value of the upgrades, versus the cost. And, it's interesting. I think most agents, or a lot of agents anyway, they seem to think, or at least, let's say this, a lot of homeowners think that they've added $250,000 worth of upgrades to their house, so therefore their house is now going to be worth $250,000 more. But the truth of the matter is, you as a realtor, if you look in any neighborhood, probably, in a tract neighborhood anyway, probably the nicest home might be 5% better than average, and the worst home might be 5% lower than average. And if you think about that, say you're in a $700,000 neighborhood, that's a stretch of a 770 basically to a $700,000 property. And so, there aren't homes in that same neighborhood that are kind of the same, that are 600 or 900. It's usually about a 10% variance in the neighborhood. And so, again, you might dump 150,000 or 200,000 into a remodel, but it's going to be difficult for you to push yourself past that 5% better than average. And it's also going to be really difficult to get yourself to 10%. Yet I get agents, mostly homeowners, who think that theirs has to be worth 20% more, but it's just not the case. And the value, it could cost you, for example, $150,000 to put in a swimming pool, which is just kind of an ordinary, nice swimming pool. But chances of you getting $50,000 for the swimming pool on resale after the concrete truck drives away is all the value you're going to get. Now, we often think that you might get, if you're lucky, 40% back on a swimming pool. And the same with adding square footage to the home. You can spend a lot on adding the square footage, but you may only get 10 or 20% back for the value. Kitchens, I always say, and they're really tough ones because, kitchens certainly cost a lot of money, but you have to remember you started with a kitchen and you started with a kitchen that was working. So now all you've done is improve it a whole lot. And you're really lucky if you get 15% back on the kitchen remodel. So not that you shouldn't do a kitchen remodel, but for example, if you're doing the kitchen remodel to sell the house, it may not even be cost effective. If you're doing it to keep the house, like a swimming pool, it's a great investment because you're going to enjoy it and your kids will enjoy the swimming pool and you'll enjoy cooking in the kitchen. Rob, what could you contribute about that? I know that, you're out there all the time too, trying to figure out how much these remodels are worth and what kind of, how much they add. And you may, by the way, even disagree with what I put up here because I don't think you've even seen these slides till this morning. So
I probably disagree a little bit in the sense that obviously it's a little tricky in this market. In a hot market, poor homes can sell for a lot because people are desperate. If this is all that's available. So the market gets kind of backwards in that in a bad market, if you have a bad location, you're on a busy street, that house will sit there a long time. But in a great market like we have now, people don't care so much about the location because this is the only house available. You want it, you take it. So I think that it can be the same with remodeling, that in a hot market, we see a lot of homes that are in really bad shape that'll sell for a large premium because people they need a house and they're desperate. They've made all these offers and they haven't been able to do that. So sometimes you could have the nicest house in the neighborhood won't sell for the premium it might always sell for just because the way the market is today. But in a bad market, people will pay maybe extra for that. They'll appreciate that remodeled home because they don't have to do it, obviously. They don't have to spend the money to do the remodel. But I think like what John said, typically as what John and I have always taught, we've trained probably trained 50 to 100 appraisers over the last 30 years, that a remodel kitchen's worth about 5% of the value of the home, and remodel bathrooms are worth about 5% of the value of the home a lot of times. So if you've got a house that's remodeled kitchen and bath compared to a house that's fairly standard, you can expect it'll probably sell at about a 10% premium. If the house is completely gutted to the point, basically almost brand new, then you're looking at about that 20% premium. So that's how we see it. I think like carpet and paint and just refreshing the house will typically bring in maybe 2.5% extra value in the market. But I think, obviously kitchens and baths are the biggest thing right now, especially with the new designs and new, what the look is. The grays, the whites, or whatever the current trend is or the style of the home. But I definitely think, kitchen, bathrooms, you're looking at probably a 5 to 10% premium in today's market.
good. Another interesting one that we always have thought pools are worth about 5%. I always think that's kind of an interesting thing that, when this industry got all computerized, we were able to really start going through a lot of data and really extracting different things that we weren't really able to do when some of us, like Rob and I, go back so long, we used to fill these things out by hand, I think. At least I did before we got all computerized. And so it's really kind of cool to be able to really look at this and also be able to put some percentage type adjustments on it. The appraisal come in at what? Yeah, so reviewing the appraisal as a realtor, check the obvious things. Look at the square feet. What does public record say? What did the appraiser measure? Was there an addition that didn't get taken into account? But is there some sort of, square foot deficiency or discrepancy? Are the bed and the bath counts right? I can't tell you, as experienced as I am. Most all the appraisals I do personally, because I do a lot of litigation, I usually have someone else with me. And the last thing we do before we walk out of the house is we do a bed and bathroom count together. And you would not believe how many times I'm walking out of the house and one of the two of us has like missed a bedroom or missed a powder room or something. So as careful as we try and be. So I think it's a real good thing. And then see again how it looks with public records, and check the amenities on the subject property, whether it's, pools, did it get mentioned? Does it have a spa? All the upgrades, alarm systems, solar, whatever all those things are. And then also check them, the comps as well. Remember what Rob was saying earlier, that a lot of these properties, because you're a realtor, you've been in the comps and you know more than the appraiser does. And the appraiser is, only seeing the house from the outside. He or she has probably gone through the photos that the realtor wanted to show us in the MLS, but we didn't see all the rooms. We've only seen what somebody wanted to show us, which are probably all the good things. And so, if there's something in that comp, for example, that, what we saw was one bathroom that's been remodeled, but the other two have not been, that's something that's a really good information for us to know, and for you to, bring notes about that, and give to the appraiser so that they can, make those kinds of proper adjustments. And then making time adjustments, which we may be hitting a peak here. I'm not sure. But some of us, Rob and I, have talked to, the market seems to have been cooling off. It doesn't seem to be going backwards yet, at least in Orange County, but it does seem to have cooled off quite a bit. But one of the problems we've had for the last couple of years is houses selling and bidding, bidding wars, and appraisers not making proper time adjustments. And I'm going to show you on the next slide here where you need to look for this. This is just a sample that I just pulled out of the drawer somewhere yesterday for this presentation, but this is on the second page of the appraisal on the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report. You've got all the information, regarding comp 1, 2, 3, and then there's another marketing page that'll go on if you got marketing, comps 4, 5, and 6. But for each one of these line items here, we fill these out starting right here, the sale date, and right here, sale date S is November 17th, contract date was October 17, and there is this $8,000 adjustment upward, meaning that since then the properties have gone up at least $8,000. Now you see an older comp here. This was November. This one is September. There's an adjustment here for $14,000. So all this will add to the final value. If you, oops, what did I do? I don't know what I did. Oh, well, we'll just do it like this. And then, So make sure that they've made those time adjustments. And then the last one is appealing the appraisal. And I have no idea why this, there we go. And I'm going to let Rob do this section because he's kind of the master at that. I don't know how many appraisals we're doing over at ASAP right now, but 1,200 or something a month, probably 1,500. And you can well imagine what Rob does all day long since he's the managing partner over there. People are, every problem that comes through that can't be solved somewhere else lands on Rob's desk. And so he's the master at that. So I'm gonna let him talk about the appeal process and what he's looking for when, you know, when it's presented to him.
So I think, well, we at ASAP, we work with credit unions. That's our focus. I mean, we probably do 50 plus credit unions here in California. A lot of Southern California. Most of them, not schools first, but we do most all the other credit unions here in Southern California. So if you ever have a borrower that's using a credit union, it's a good chance at ASAP we might be doing the appraisal. Appealing the appraisal, the first thing I would always suggest if the appraisal comes in below purchase price and you're concerned about it, obviously is to get a copy of the appraisal. Try to spend a few minutes going through the report and just making sure that it's factual. And like John said, making sure that is the square footage correct? Is the bedroom bath count correct? Did the appraiser report the condition, the upgrades, the remodeling, those factors correct? Because a lot of times when I look at, where a lender might send me someone else's appraisal to look at from, it's not from our company, is that appraisers aren't great at making condition or quality adjustments. A lot of these guys are not really experienced in remodeling or what the true costs are or the impact of the market. So just making sure, and a lot of times you've been in a lot of these properties that are used as comparables, and you can look to see if this property is truly the same. If the appraiser said that comp one is the same condition as the subject, but you've been in comp one, you're like, there's no way that's the same. I've been in that one. So going through and trying to see if there's anything that's in the report that's not factual that you can deal with. If you feel that the comparables the appraiser used are not the real, the true comparables, that there are better ones, which there could be, then going through and then you're going to be providing those comparables to the lenders. So most lenders have a reconsideration process that you have to fill out a form and provide the comparables or information. So you'd want to fill that out. Rule number one, though, which we see, is don't attack the appraiser. That is, a lot of people feel like bullying the appraiser at the start is the right approach, and I would say it's not the right approach. So a lot of appraisers can be sensitive. They feel maybe they're, they've worked hard at the value. They think they're right. And if they get, yelled at in writing, a lot of times that's not the approach. So better to, hey, I understand, it's a tough market. I appreciate, the appraiser's effort. Starting off, on a positive note's always good. Though I did find some inaccuracies or things that the appraiser might have missed, and bringing those to the attention. Or also there were these comparables that were very recent that the appraiser didn't consider, and putting those in there. But making sure they're truly comparables. A lot of times, the agents will provide, high priced properties that sale wise support the price. But when you look at the comp, the house is, brand new and we're 50 years old, or it's on a 20,000 square foot lot and we're only on an 8,000 square foot lot. So yes, it did sell at that price, but it's when the appraiser makes adjustments to it, it's not going to come in at the purchase price. But I think that, like I said, the best thing is to come with a good attitude to the appraiser, provide any information he missed, and try to be and information that he's not aware of would be the best place to start. Hopefully the appraisal company is good about reviewing that information. What we do, we have reviewers on staff that are senior appraisers, guys that have been appraising, and girls, for 20 plus years. So when we do purchases, if the appraiser comes in below purchase, we look at it before it even goes to the lender, and we'll go back to the appraiser with suggestions. But unfortunately, a lot of the appraisal companies out there are not skilled at working with their appraisers, or they don't have relationships with their appraisers to get a rebuttal through, which is disappointing. But I do think if you come with good information and you really believe the purchase price is there, and you've got the information and you provide it in a nice, workable manner, then you should be successful.
So my next that kind of actually concludes the presentation. So I mean, at this point, we're really trying to open it up to questions. I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of questions because and I think between Rob and I, we should be able to handle a lot of them, and we'll do our best because I know that, you know, the appraisers seem to be kind of God in the transaction, especially nowadays, you know, with the market being as crazy as it is. Elena, are you going to be handling the questions, or?
I have been monitoring and answering a couple of them, but I don't have any here right this second. So if anybody has some questions, please type it into the chat or into the Q&A so that we can have John and Rob address them.
I'll tell you this, I got so mad at an appraiser this year on one of my own transactions that I called Rob. And he had to calm me down. So I certainly understand our frustration out there. And it's good to have somebody like Rob around who can, you know, really look at it from a new perspective and kind of go through things.
I think the biggest issue we see with properties that come in below purchase price, one would be correct time adjustments, because the market especially in the first part of this year was probably increasing at 2 to maybe 3% a month at times.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, I mean, obviously properties were selling $100,000 above list price in many cases, or more, with, you know, multiple offers. But I don't think appraisers truly understood how fast the market was going up. One of the problems appraisers faced in the past is that they didn't think they could make time adjustments. And you had appraisers they felt like they were restricted to making certain type of adjustments. But a lot of that in the last couple of years, I think, has changed. I know Fannie Mae has tried to bring out information that we've removed restrictions such as how large the comp could be GLA wise, or what kind of adjustments, you know, how big of an adjustment you can make. And Fannie Mae has said they want the best comparables, regardless of if they're maybe larger than typical. Maybe it's 20% larger in GLA, but it's next door, and it's very recent. And Fannie Mae provides a lot of data now to the lenders in terms of market adjustments, which we sometimes are able to get and provide to the appraisers. Another factor is appraisers, they don't make big enough lot adjustments. They don't make big enough GLA adjustments. So you'll see appraisers that are in, you know, $1 million neighborhoods, and they're making very small lot adjustments. And I think realtors understand that, you know, this backyard is 3,000 square feet larger than any other backyard in the neighborhood. And, you know, the market, as from the buyers, were coming in saying, oh my gosh, I love this backyard. This is the best feature of the house. And, you know, the value of that backyard might be $50,000. but the appraiser is only giving you $10,000. So a lot of times it's understanding what the best feature of the house is, because every property has a great feature. It's the location, it's the floor plan, it's the lot size, or it's the remodeling. That's something that makes this house a little more unique than the neighborhood. And that's the items you want to bring out to the appraiser, and to make sure that he's adequately adjusting for that. So if you have a large lot property, is making sure if you could do some research up front and find some similar large lot properties that show that the market pays a significant premium for that. Because appraisers are notorious for making small adjustments for lot, and they miss the boat quite a few times. So I think that's one of the biggest things that we see right away, is that not big enough GLA adjustments, not big enough lot adjustments. And then also not really understanding the remodeling too, probably those three things.
Great, thank you. Betty Chen, I see that you have your hand up, and I believe I've given you permission to speak. Hopefully you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Doesn't appear that Betty's able to do it. Okay, it's operator error, I'm sure, on my part. I will, Betty has actually typed in her question, so let me see what her question is. How do you evaluate non-permitted extra square footages versus permitted ones? How big are the price differences?
I think permitted square footage sometimes comes down to lenders. Fannie Mae allows the appraiser to give value to non-permitted area as long as there are no health and safety issues, but the appraiser must provide comps that have similar non-permitted area. Some lenders choose not to give value to non-permitted areas. That's their policy. So if it's not permitted, they don't give value. So that can be a lender issue. It's tricky to do non-permitted adjustments. What I always try to recommend to appraisers is, if same with maybe like when you have solar, but you don't have any, if you don't have any comps that have owned solar, Fannie Mae has said you're not allowed to make an adjustment for solar unless really you can support that adjustment in the market. But what the appraiser could do is give value at the end of his appraisal by reconciling to the higher end of the range. So you might have an enclosed patio or an area that's been turned into living area. The appraiser is unable to give value to it, but when he makes his final reconciliation, he can say, well, I'm going to go to the upper end because I believe that unpermitted area has value. Percentage-wise, John, I mean, I don't know if it could it be half value maybe? I've never really analyzed what a non-permitted GLA could, what it's worth in the market.
So what we often do in the court system anyway, for unpermitted square footage, if it appears as if it would be permitted, in other words, it's just something somebody added, but they didn't get the permits for it, but it has heating, has all the things it's supposed to have, we typically give it 50% value. So that's kind of what we do, but then we're not appraising for a lender, and the lender really can rule the roost on it. I mean, that they can tell their appraiser yes or no to what they want to lend on. So.
Okay, awesome. I have another question from Michael. When looking at the time adjustments, I did not see a year mentioned. Is there an assumption of how recent they need to be?
This will be for both of us, I guess. So we typically use about a 3-month period. And recently, in the last year and a half, we have been actually using 60 days. So if we have a comp that is more than 60 days old, we'll adjust it for time, because exactly what Rob was saying, the beginning of this year, we were going up 2%, maybe even 3% in some of the different areas. And so you really just needed to account for that.
I think also on time adjustments. So if you look at an appraisal, they're going to report 2 dates. They're going to report the settle date and the contract date, the pending date. So we encourage the appraisers to adjust from pending date. So if the property may have sold in August, but it went into escrow in June or July, then we would want to adjust for June and July, not just from August. The best way to make the time adjustments, though, is you need to have something that supports it, meaning a pending sale that the purchase price is this amount can be used to support a time adjustment, or a very recent closed sale. If you have a sale in September that just closed, and that would support adjustments for the last few months. But in some cases, in certain areas, unfortunately, you're not going to have an appraisal that has all that all the closed sales will be within a month or two. So if the appraiser used a comp 6 months ago, then, you would hope he would adjust accordingly from that time, which could be 10%, or it could be more. I mean, I think a lot of times we've said, we kind of gauge at least 1% a month, but I think that in the early parts of the year, it was, like I said, 2% a month. But for the appraiser to make time adjustments, we just need the most recent information as possible. So a pending sale would be great. So if you know what it sold for, or obviously if you have September closed sales, you could use those to adjust for the last several months.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have another question. Can an agent or a seller order an appraisal independently if they don't agree with the lender's appraisal?
So the answer to that is you can order the appraisal independently, but it's not going to really do any good, because the lender has to be the one who engages the appraiser. And so what you could do maybe is get another appraisal. But as far as you going out and getting an appraiser and giving it to the lender, they're not going to take, just in practice, they're not going to take the appraisal.
Yeah, that's going to be the lenders. Yeah, the lender is going to be the one who makes this decision. So if I know, like with credit unions we deal with, and even if sometimes if I have an appraiser that we don't agree with it, which can happen, we think that he's incorrect, we'll order another appraisal. So I think the lender has that option to order another appraisal themselves, and you could push for that. And a lot of times they'll pick up the fee, not the borrower having to pay for it. But if you truly, truly believe the appraisal did a poor job and you've documented it and showed them, that the best thing would be just push your lender to order another appraisal.
Okay, great. Okay, Tracy has a question. How do you value ADUs? And are you using rental income that could be generated by an ADU when concluding value?
That's a good one.
The ADUs, typically the ones that we see that are smaller, usually contribute somewhere between 5 to 10% of the value of the property. And we do look at the income, but really the size of the ADU is really what's most important. Rob, how do you treat that?
Yeah, so we see a lot of ADUs, especially out in the San Fernando Valley. You've got a lot of properties where you've built brand new ones. So you have to consider a couple things. One, obviously the size is going to play a role. I mean, you could have a 400 square foot ADU that used to be a garage, or you've got a brand new 1,000 or 1,200 square foot ADU. So we have to consider the size of it, but we also have to consider the age of it. So you have a lot of brand new ADUs being built, and they're quite expensive. I mean, we see a lot of borrowers that say that they're spending, you know, $150,000 plus on their ADU. So the only way to truly value it is obviously you need comparable sales that have ADUs. So, but you want to, again, you want to make sure they're comparing apples to apples. I see appraisers that the subject has a brand new 1,200 square foot ADU that costs $175,000, and they're comparing it to an ADU that's only 400 square feet and it's 20 years old. So it's tricky. It's hard to say in the market that the cost can be the same value. So if they spend 175,000, it's worth 175,000. But every market is unique to this because there's a lot of markets where it's very popular, and then a lot of markets where you don't, you know, there's certain residential neighborhoods you don't see a lot of ADUs. They're very uncommon. And so they're more difficult to value. And if that's the case, they probably will not provide as high a value. But I would say that looking at the size of the ADU would be the first thing. And then looking at a cost per square foot would probably be a good starting point. So you could look at somewhere probably depending on if it's newer, you know, $100 a square foot would not be probably unrealistic. If it's older, maybe it's 50 to 75. A lot of times we don't give it the full value of, let's say, what we would consider the house adjustment to be, that the house has more value than the ADU because it's not as common, kind of like a pool where not everybody has one. So it's not going to get the entire value of the house, but we're seeing it become closer and closer as they become more common. So I guess you'd have to consider your neighborhood to see if it's common, and then it would be helping to, you know, locate ones that are similar to support it. I mean, it's not an easy question to answer.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add, guys?
Oh, just thank you for having us. And Rob, thank you for joining me. We need to do stuff like this more often. And so anyway, thanks. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you. Thank you. Thanks, Rob. Thanks to everybody. Thanks for everybody who participated, and hopefully you've got some more knowledge for your toolkit out there in the real estate world. And thank you again to everybody. Okay.
I think anybody has any questions later, you can always forward the emails. We'll be happy to answer anything that comes up.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, John.
Okay, you're welcome.